Hey everyone, Andres here. Welcome to another episode of the Ponytails Podcast. If this is your first episode, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'll do a quick explanation of what we do. We interview people who sold books with a company called Southwestern Advantage during their college internship summers. So basically, they go door to door for 80 hours a week on straight commission with no place to live across the country, selling these educational books to help families with homework. They've been doing this since 1868. And so, as you can imagine, there's a ton of people who have done this over the years. And so we get to talk to them and hear what they're up to now. Some people we've had on the show who are doing all sorts of different things. We've had people who rock climb for a living. We've had people who are college professors. We've had people who do aviation and technology. They're working in AI. They're stand-up comedians, a variety. So hopefully you guys enjoy what we have here for you today. My guest is Todd Ballenger. He is originally from Gastonia, North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte. He went to the University of Carolina in Chapel Hill. So for 7 summers from 1985 to 1992, and his favorite scroll from Og Mandino, which is kind of like the book that we read at the time to motivate ourselves during the summer, is number 5. I will live this day as if it is my last, one of our favorites, of course, here at the show as well. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Make sure you guys check us out on all the socials. And when I come back, I'll be on with Todd. Hello, hello.
Hello.
How's it going? Thanks for being here. This is so exciting.
You know, after hearing that intro, I started thinking this could stir up one of my recurring dreams. I had 2 recurring dreams. One that I didn't graduate from college, and the other one that I was still in the book field. And it's taken me 20 years to work through both of those. So if I start having either of those dreams again, I'm coming for you, man.
You know, it's fair. We have it's shared trauma is what really brings us together, but emphasis on the word trauma.
I just assumed this was a therapy session, and I'm excited about it.
It has been. You have no idea how much of my Southwestern daddy issues I've gotten rid of because of this podcast. 192 episodes. I'm feeling enlightened.
You got about 900 to go. You'll probably be fine.
Oh, it's I'm not going to say that you're I should probably say you're tied for our favorite Todd that we've had on the show. You're tied for favorite Todd.
All right. Well, I'm happy with given the Todd quality that I've heard on this podcast with McWhorter. I'm happy to be in that company.
It's top shelf. It's top shelf for sure. But yeah, thank you for being here. Oh man, I can't believe that this is what we get to do for work here on the show. But let's dig in. Let's dive in. As always, we'd like to start with what you're up to now. And, how has your life been? I know there's like 30 years that you have to cover since 92 and that journey of leaving Southwestern. But what are you up to now? And how did you find yourself here?
Wow. Let's see. Today, I am actually working at my alma mater, the University of North Carolina, teach some in the business school, work with the honors program there, about 2,000 students, that high-achieving, intellectually curious souls, and we develop content and curriculum to teach them about how to prepare for life. And I usually have 3 to 5 side hustles that I'm working on, just things I'm curious about. Right now, we're doing, I have a coaching training business, development business, invest in various startups. We've got a dark fiber company laying fiber from Myrtle Beach to Atlanta. We've got, a company that's doing kind of AI-based calling that we're working on right now. So I like to have, but they keep me sort of energized and excited about what's going on in the world. So always have a couple of, projects going on that are interesting. So, but I guess out of college, if I work backwards to how I got to here, after my book career, started a financial services company, did that for 2 or 3 years, transitioned into mortgage lending, which I found kind of interesting. So we transitioned our financial planning business into a mortgage company, We grew that over about 7-8 years to be, we were the largest independent mortgage broker in North Carolina. And then we had the good fortune of connecting with some other people, and we took that public in 1999. It was called mortgage.com. So we rolled up with 5 other companies into a NASDAQ IPO with a group. And then we sold that to Citibank 3 years later, and then started another company doing consulting. It was just bank and development consulting. And we built that consulting business up and sold it to a company in New Jersey called PHH, which was a financial services company that was sort of in the mortgage lending space. And we ran that for like 3 to 5 years, left, started a software company because I was interested in technology, sold that to another company in New Jersey, in Red Bank, and a private equity firm in Maryland. So then we worked with them and acquired some other companies and sold them. And then I decided I wanted to kind of go back to something I really enjoyed, which was working with young people. It was probably the thing I loved most about Southwestern was coaching and training and developing young people. And students are, they're kind of going through a birth canal from parents to life. And it's really interesting. Yeah. It's an interesting time. So I've spent the last 5 years at UNC working on an initiative that is designed to kind of rethink the way we prepare college students for life after college, not the academic side. I think, universities do a good job with that, but because they're so academic, they don't think a lot about what it takes to prepare someone for life and work when 50% of the don't even exist when they start these days, because there's so many jobs coming on with AI and robotics and things like that. And how do you prepare for that? So it's been a lot of fun. Great group of people, and work.
That's phenomenal. Okay, so I have so many questions. I hope it's okay if I pick your brain.
Sure.
That's amazing. So I kind of want to start this backwards, and then I think this would be helpful. So as a person listening in, the first thing I wanted to ask you about is, so you're teaching business development, you're talking to students about this. When it comes to like the curriculum versus what you learned as a college kid yourself, and what we know book people are kind of learning through that experience, where are some of the overlaps? You're like, these are things you can learn both in a classroom and in like the book field. And then where are some things that maybe, whoa, this is not like, even though we're teaching business theory or business here, there's something about the book field that you can't get anywhere else. Can you shed some light on what maybe those differences are?
Yeah, there are companies like Strata that have done a lot of work around the college experience and how students value the experience. And it's really interesting, because when you look back on the things they value and how they value their time in college, there are a couple of things that, if this happens, they value college in a completely different way. And one of them is finding a mentor of any kind. A college student that finds a mentor during their 4 years will value their college experience 4 to 6 times greater than a student that graduates without ever finding, say, a mentor. A project, a meaningful project, real work of some kind. And that can be an internship. It can be something that they create for themselves. They study abroad is an example of where that often happens. But what's really interesting to me when I first looked at that is these were all largely experiential dynamics, that the experience of being in a classroom is really wonderful because you learn things. But, when I look back on Southwestern, I got my degree from UNC, but I got my education, on the book field because I was forced to learn a lot of skills and a lot of things that were very transferable down the road. So the stuff that we're trying to do is more direct experience oriented. You could call it, preparing for work, preparing for life, and it's tactical stuff, but a lot of it is just, how do you role play walking into a room and seeing everyone with their backs turned to you in little circles? How do you learn to do that? Tap on a shoulder, get into a group, or do you stand there by yourself? And so, but again, Southwestern was the ultimate experiential learning, and it checked a lot of those boxes because you had a mentor, you had people that you worked with very intensely. It was meaningful work. You were paid well for it, for the work that you did. And
Yeah.
so,
And do you take any, so the stuff that you learned from that experience, how are you applying, or what of that are you applying to it, to the curriculum that you're building out with these students, I guess?
I was sitting with a student yesterday who wanted to get a job in investment banking, and we were talking about pre-approach and approaching and stuff. And so, I can still do my sales talk in my sleep. Again, that's why I worry about the dream starting back. But pre-approach, approach, intro, demo. I mean, I use that all the time as a framework, just because it's a language that we know, and we can impart it to a student to say, what do you know about this person? Why do you want to go work for that company or that person? That's pre-approach. And then how are you going to approach them? Is it going to be a letter? Is it going to be a phone call? Is it going to be this and that? And how are you going to introduce yourself in a way that's really interesting and compelling? And then when the interview is the demo, right? That's your personal demo, but they've already bought you. If they're taking the time to interview you, they're not doing it because they're bored. So people buy you in the pre-approach, the approach, and the intro, and then the demos where they get the conviction, and then you got to close for an internship or an opportunity. And if you're bold enough and you'll do that, they'll respect that in a way that might get you an opportunity, a job. But it's not just jobs. It's very competitive in the student world these days when it comes to scholarships and opportunities on campus, and even getting into clubs. I mean, if you want to join a fraternity or sorority, right? There's still a process of you got to, why do you want to go to that fraternity, and who do you know there, and it's the same dynamic. So I think that sales framework is something that has stayed with me and been very, very useful, especially at scale, because it scales pretty nicely.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that's cool. I mean, it's great that you're teaching your students that. It's great that these kids are being exposed to that, even though they didn't get to sell. Because that is something. I mean, I had a friend who was doing an internship. He already graduated, so it's not an internship, but it's like a sales acceleration course thing.
Sure.
And he's going to travel to whatever. But one of the, it was expensive, crazy. But one of the weeks they had him go door to door to sell a product, and it was like a can opener or something. And he calls me. He goes, "Dude, I have to go door to door. I've never tried to sell anything in my life. This is why I want to do this program. Can you give me any pointers?" And I said, first go try out by yourself and see what you learn and use what they taught you to be coachable, right? But then if you're still struggling, just call me. And he calls me, and I gave him pre-approach. I gave him how to do pre-approach. Just like knocking, "Hey, this house next door, should I skip them?" Like just the basic stuff that we learned. And it was as if his brain just exploded. He didn't know what to do with all that.
It is. It's a frame. You give them a framework and they can build on that framework. But absent the framework, it's kind of like they're floundering. There's no vocabulary there to work off of.
Yeah. So then, as you look at what you're teaching, what do you think are some of the gaps that are still missing in the curriculum side of? Because in my head, I think, and where this question is coming from, is the business school where I went to school, University of Nebraska Lincoln. I graduated with an econ degree from there. Yada yada yada. I would talk to, being an econ major, I would talk to a lot of business majors, and oftentimes I would notice gaps in. I mean, they would know a lot of things about business, right? What an IPO is, your acquisition costs, all these other like fancy words, which are important in business to know. But the other aspect that I had learned from Southwestern, they still seem to have that gap. And I mean, I don't know, that was 6 years ago, but do you notice some of these gaps? And I guess what are some of those gaps that you think exist still between curriculum and experience?
Well, the biggest gap, and this is a particular program that we've created, is called Come Here, Go Anywhere. And the idea is, if you'll come here, work with us for 4 years, we'll prepare you to go anywhere. How do you do that? The gaps that we're focused on are, presentation skills, communication skills, resume, LinkedIn, learning to play sort of the game. I mean, even understanding, pi metrics and algorithms and things that are being used now in the selection process. I mean, LinkedIn is a gorilla out there, and they're growing very rapidly. And these large technology companies are trying to, solve for a pain that is, how do you find quality talent? And so some of this is learning to play the game, but a lot of this at the same level is just a lot of students, I see them, they graduate and they're trying to find a job, and they'll send me a resume, and you're just like pulling your hair out looking at it going, I mean, you don't put, squiggly lines, and this format is not right. And just getting them into, a sort of a format where they're confident that they can put their best foot forward is really key. And then we're big into experience, starting your first year, you're just like, I use the paperclip, analogy of, you start with a paperclip and you try to trade your way up to a car, right? So you can go lifeguard or do something your first summer that's not, that's fun. But the problem is when you go to the next summer, and it's kind of sad how competitive this stuff's gotten, but if you were a lifeguard or you did this or that, and the other kid, did this, they've got more experience. They have more to offer that employer, and they're going to compound, and that growth is going to happen faster for them. And if you miss out there, then the third year becomes even harder, right? So getting out and getting started with experiential learning very early in the process and developing mentors. I'm a big fan of something called the Personal Advisory Board, which our goal is to connect them with 10 alumni in their area of interest before they graduate as like an advisory board, that anytime they have a question, if I'm thinking about going to healthcare, I want to have 4 or 5 doctors, and 4 or 5 people that work at Humana and places like that are alumni that I can reach out and call and ask questions and get advice from. And maybe, can I send you my resume and take a quick look? Or would you look at my cover letter for this opportunity? That again gets them used to talking to adults, in a different way. And so I think that's the big stuff. It's a lot of the experiential stuff, because we all know most professors. It's rare to have a professor teach something that they've actually done. It's usually academic and theoretical.
Yeah.
And that, so there's a little bit of resonance that's missing when, if you're a professor and you say, hey, this is what it's like to start a business, and you've never started a business. Yes. And having a professor say, this is what it's like to start a business, and they've started 5 businesses, right? It's the same words, but they just carry different gravitas, I think, with the student in terms of a
little more authority. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I know I am. I wanted to give a quick shout out to the people that make this show possible, the people that bring this show to you. These are people who all sold books, and we're here to give a quick shout out to them in a spotlight about their company and what they're up to. So if you're interested, or if after listening to this, you're kind of wanting to know a little bit more, feel free to click on the links below to connect with these people. These are from an excerpt I have with them from a podcast that I do on the side. It's called Executive Exercises, where we take all our sponsors and they come into a think tank and share some awesome ideas about how to grow their business, specifically on different topics. Go check that out. But I pulled some of the comments that they had explaining what they do and who they're looking for on their companies. And so if that sounds like you, like I said, click below. Hope you enjoy. So that's and so money wise, and it just seemed like it was going to be the leads, which I wanted to go back to that because you mentioned this, and that's another thing that maybe Southwestern people don't understand is leads. And that's kind of like you're saying, basically, imagine you show up to a town to sell books, you send a postcard out to every single family that has kids in school or young children, asking them if they struggle with any of the following subjects, yes or no. Would you be interested in hearing about a product that might help you with all those subjects, yes or no, name and address, and then you just waited at your HQ for like a couple of weeks, and then you got in the mail like 700 people returning that postcard saying, come to my house, here's where I live. Hi, are you the mom of the house? Yes, and you've heard of you. Great.
Yeah. Is this your handwriting, Miss Betty? Yeah, that's my handwriting.
Yeah.
You got a few minutes? It's, again, you're not selling every single lead that you sit down with, but the leads is kind of what interested me, because that kind of anxiety feeling that I talked about at Southwestern and the anxiety I had with Family Heritage, I honestly didn't think that was going to go away, but it has. It's gone away when I sold. I still had a little bit of anxiety, but after that first knock, it goes away. But much less anxiety every week, because I know I have fresh leads coming in. And so even if this day doesn't work out, I know I got, typically our agents will get anywhere from 25 to 50 leads a week of people that they can go and call on.
I want people to understand what it is that you do, how you do it, why you do it, all of the good stuff. You hear a lot about coaching. You hear a lot about life coach, sales coach, business coach, yada, yada, coach.
Man, I think just to start off, like what it isn't, it's not training. It's not showing up and having somebody talk at you for 45 minutes to an hour. And like the way that I look at it is we're all human beings. We're all broken in some capacity. And we all know a lot of the people that I work with, they know what they're supposed to be doing. they're just not executing on it, or they're not doing it as intentionally as they should be. Or they're just not focused. They have like 15 different goals or 15 different things that they're trying to balance or do. And because of that, like they're not as intentional as they should be at home, or they're not as intentional as they should be at work, and they're not picking up the phone and calling people. And it's like having a personal trainer for your business. It's having intention on why we do what we do every day, and creating clarity and helping to build our lives and our calendars around what our future goals and intentions are.
That'll do for now. Like I said, make sure you click below to get some more information. And now back to the show.
Yeah.
A little more authority. And I was just going to point that out, which is kind of where I was headed with my next few questions, because I do remember thinking, when I was trying to recruit college kids, and they say, well, my business professor, I'm like, has your business professor like ran a business, opened entrepreneur life, right? You just crank it, worry about your marriage because the finances are kind of scary or whatever, gone through it, figured it out, sold it, IPO, like you. And very few. I mean, I'm not saying that none of them, but it's rare to find something like that. I feel like, at least where I went to school. And so just to have that be on your background and in your tool belt, to be able to say, actually, this is what I did, is such a stronger, there's just a lot more strength to that message. That's really cool. That's awesome. On that same note, let's walk through what that journey looks like for you, because you've done it 5 times, it sounds like, right? You started and sold 5 businesses?
Started 12, have sold 4.
Oh, great. So let's, and maybe I'm asking even as a personal thing, we turned this thing into an LLC, small little humble podcasting business. So first off, to you, what are some of the more common mistakes that maybe you made or you've seen other people make when they're starting out, 1 year into their entrepreneurial life? What should we avoid, and do's and don'ts that you can just off the top of your head?
So one of the most important things is to, how, and we were talking about the sales process, pre-approach, approach. That's an operating system. It's a framework. And if you may have a better one, and if you have a better one, we can use yours. If you don't have a better one, we can use mine. But immediately, the goal with most organizations is to get into congruence. And most companies tend to start with, if it's just you, right? Your everything, your sales, your marketing, your operations, your HR, you're the whole 9 yards. You have to establish an operating system that you yourself will follow, so that as you grow a second employee or a third or fourth, that operating system becomes, core culturally to how the business operates. And then it can grow and scale very quickly. Because for most businesses, to me, I like selling things. So, for me, the idea of building a business and give it to my kids is the last thing I want to do. I want to build it and sell it and build it and sell it, because it's a fun, it's like a process. And some people like to, build them and hold on to them forever. But still, if are you a Mac or PC person?
Mac.
Okay. And you mentioned, do you have any other partners in your business?
It's just me. I have a team that I have working for me, a team of 4, but from an ownership standpoint, it's just me.
Okay. Imagine the first person that you hired was a PC person, right? And you sat down and you started working together. Immediately, there are going to be some challenges because they're using a PC and you're using a Mac. Now, imagine you swap your PC and Mac, and you both have to work using those devices going forward. You would eventually figure it out, but it'd be frustrating as hell, and it would take you a lot of time and energy. That's kind of like what happens when you hire a new employee. Every time you bring a new person in, and when you're scaling or growing a business, everyone's switching their laptops around because there's a new operating system. And I'm talking about, the operating system up here that's coming in and being utilized. And if people don't know what the rules are, they'll immediately make up their own rules. And so the entrepreneur, if it's a solo entrepreneur starting out, you've got to define a very tight set of operating rules for yourself. And it's for you, but it's also so that as people come in, not just people that work for you, but vendors, partners, people that you associate with, you have sponsors, there's real clarity around your value proposition and what you do. because that operating system is really, really, kind of tight. And to the extent you have loose people, you need tighter operating systems. If you have tight people, you can have looser operating systems. But this operating system, think of it as a common vocabulary. And there's the E-Myth, which is a great book. If you've never read that, there's a book called The Goal. These are process-oriented sort of books, but the key is, what's your operating system, and does everybody have something that they're all? Because if you do, you can grow and scale very, very quickly. If you don't, I find most businesses that have not scaled the way they want to scale, it's because they really have lots of people doing lots of different businesses in the name of one business, but they're not really communicating. They really aren't clear about the future, the brighter future that they're working towards, and how they're going to get there, and that kind of a thing. And that's where you're trying to get everyone to say, all right, this is our operating system. This is how we're going to work together. These are the rules. It's like gaming. If you think of yourself in a simulation, right? If you go play Fortnite or some other game, you're kind of suspending the laws of normal life to go play a game. Otherwise, it wouldn't be any fun. Well, I think of businesses like that. I'm like, okay, you guys got to decide what's the game you're playing, podcasting. What are the rules that we're going to play this game by? And those could be hours. It could be, and you get really clear on sort of, when I'm playing this game, this is what this sort of looks like. And then it helps other people to understand how to come play the game with you effectively.
Oof, that's gold, right? Well, this has been a great episode. That's so good. I read a book called, I mostly read the book called Scaling Up. But they talked about something like this, where it's just like, the best way to scale is to just be replicable, like kind of like RNA or like your DNA, where it's like, this is how you copy it. There's going to be mutations every once in a while. Those are mistakes people make, but from the standpoint of like, this is the carbon copy. This is how we do it here. And that's something Southwestern did really well, for example, is you knock on your door, you step back 3 times, you smile, you talk low and slow. This is like, and if you follow it to a T, you'll be the top first here or whatever. That's how you scale. Wow, that's amazing. Really, really good stuff. Thank you so much for sharing that. In your opinion, is there, as you were moving with these businesses and as they started improving and increasing, what role, I'm curious to hear, because you started a business like right after you got done selling books in 93, 94, and then you started businesses, much more into the technology age, I guess, if you want to call it that. What are some of the challenges, because you're getting into AI? This is like cutting edge stuff. How have you adapted to being able to roll with the way that technology is evolving so quickly from a standpoint of starting a business? Because I feel like that's really impressive.
You learn this the hard way, but the market is always right. And it's because it's the market, it's bigger than me and anyone else, even groups of people. So you simply ask, what does the market want right now? And if you want to be right, you align with the market, right? And so anytime I was doing something I thought was a good idea and I was working hard at it and I wasn't being rewarded, AKA, there were just lots of obstacles or impedances. It's not that you don't go around them, if you can, or you work through them when you can, but you got to be, pig-headed enough, but also smart enough to say, all right, this isn't what the market wants right now from me or from, I guess, the market. So I find the market it's pretty clear. It tells you what it wants, right? And so you just keep listening to what the market may need at any particular time to the best of your ability. And then you engage that. And then you look for the places where you're, I call them taps, but you're rewarded in some way through, gosh, I started thinking about this. And then 2 days later, I met a guy who was doing this. And then 3 days later, this article popped up about this. I'm like, that's telling me that, okay, there's something here that's sort of pulling me in this path and there's a market there. Or I'm struggling. I keep trying to figure out how to make this work. It's not working, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, okay, this is not it. So there's a sort of a sensitivity I think you build up over time from just beating your head against the wall. But right now, AI is solving. I've been really fascinated by it the last 3-4 months. I've gotten really into all the different tools and technologies and how they can be used and applied. And I'm like, okay, why is this so exciting to people, right? So it's always kind of looking at, there's the technical aspect of what's happening. And then they're stepping back and going, why are people excited about this? I brought up in a meeting the other day, and half the people said, this is so exciting. Half the people said, this is terrifying. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I mean, fear and greed are two of the biggest motivators in the world. And they were both there. You know, the excitement was, the excitement was like, I can get stuff done in half the time. I sat down with my daughter the other night. We were at dinner, and she started talking about ChatGPT and the tools she's using, right? And how she's using them. And she's like, do you think this is okay? And I'm like, kid, if you think you're going to go into a library 10, 20 years from now, then, because that's the equivalent, right, of going back and researching. The way she's using it is she's using AI to do research. She's pulling that research back. She's figuring out what of the research she likes. She's dropping that into Quillbot. Then it rewrites and paraphrases. She pulls it back. She then edits it based on the teacher's questions that she's asking. Then she runs it through a plagiarism checker to make sure that nothing that she's created or used is going to flag anything. Then she's had a 3-step process she's come up with, and I didn't even know she was interested in this stuff. But I'm like, again, the kids are figuring this out at a very early age, and the bar gets elevated because it's not how good a writer are you anymore. It's, can you use a tool that makes you an eloquent writer, right? Yeah. And you still got to have the ideas, but you're suddenly lifting the bar on populations of people who can lead to really cool stuff and finance. And, I like the value proposition that it starts to eliminate a lot of the menial tasks and things that I would do otherwise. I've used it 3 times today for a blog post. I had it write an apology letter to someone for something that happened, and it wrote an incredible letter. And I probably edited 6 or 7 words and changed the names, and it was beautifully written. And someone can say, well, that seems like cheating. I'm like, it's a beautifully written letter. I wouldn't have taken the time to put together the framework and the level. All I had to do was substitute the issue, right? And I was sincerely sorry it happened. It wasn't my fault. But hey, I still am the one that needed to write that letter for that particular situation. And sending it out, I was like, man, I felt good about the letter, because in literally 90 seconds, I provided something that I think, and I got a great response back from the person. Now, if they were listening to this podcast, would they feel slighted that I used AI to craft an apology letter? I got the work done. It just saved me 20 minutes of my life, and that happens a lot.
Yeah. That's kind of, and just in case people haven't heard of ChatGPT by now, but they should have by now. But in case you have, it's basically Google on steroids, if you will. Not from the standpoint of like it can't like pull up like current events or anything like that. You can have it do things like you just said, write an apology letter, or other people have started using it for fun reasons, like write an Elvis song, but in the voice of Michael Jackson or something like that, and it like does scarily accurately, like pretty bananas. So just for context, because people might be like, what the heck is this? What are you talking about by apology letter? But from the standpoint of the way I see it is, this must have been a little bit what people felt like when calculators came out, like the ones that we know today, where it's like, people used to do, calculations with long form and carry the 2 and whatever. And then all of a sudden there's a device where you could type in numbers, hit the plus sign or division sign, square root sign, hit equals, and then you get the exact answer within a second or less. That's the exact same thing. I mean, you're still doing the work. You're still having to think of how to use the arithmetic, but the tool to get it done and process it is just helping you do it faster. That's how I see it anyway. And that's what your daughter's doing, right? And that's what you did with the apology later.
Yeah. I mean, we've had we've had the agricultural age where money was made through controlling land. And you have the industrial age where money was controlled and power was controlled through machinery. We've had the technology age, which is where we've been for the last 20, 30 years, where most of the aggregated power and money comes through technology. Alvin Toffler believes the next age is the transformation age. And the driver for that is a lot of the work that we've been doing becomes no longer necessary. And that's where you see modern monetary theory and other things. But if I could sit here and say, send a letter to Andre outlining, the 7 points of starting a business, and it comes up and looks really good. I'm like, edit, paragraph 2, and I send it. And I would have spent a half hour on that, and I spend 5 minutes. And that happens repeatedly. You start getting hours of your day back, which you can either fill with more work or something else. But the theory is eventually we start to become more and more interested in, well, what's it all about? And why are we really here? And how do I transform sort of pain into pleasure and other things like that? But the transformation age will be the people that sort of take these prior ages and build on them to solve bigger and badder problems, which means maybe life isn't all about working 80 hours a week or 60 hours a week. Maybe it should be more fun and more exploratory and, and whatnot. But these are really interesting problems, and it's going to have healthcare advances and, AI is doing for medicine right now, incredible things. And, as COVID sort of launched a lot of that in many ways. And so we start solving a lot of the medical problems. We live longer. We got more time to figure out what it's all about.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I know I am. I wanted to give a quick shout out to the people that make this show possible, the people that bring this show to you. These are people who all sold books, and we're here to give a quick shout out to them in a spotlight about their company and what they're up to. So if you're interested, or if after listening to this, you're kind of wanting to know a little bit more, feel free to click on the links below to connect with these people. These are from an excerpt I have with them from a podcast that I do on the side. It's called Executive Exercises, where we take all our sponsors and they come into a think tank and share some awesome ideas about how to grow their business specifically on different topics. Go check that out. But I pulled some of the comments that they had explaining what they do and who they're looking for on their companies. And so if that sounds like you, like I said, click below. Hope you enjoy. That's okay. And actually, and this is good to, I had Nick kind of explain this a little bit too, but because I've been in the insurance industry before, for people who are listening, like, how do you make 115% commission?
The way I explain it to people is the insurance companies we represent. So we're a broker. All these companies we work with, they know they're not really going to be making any money off the sales that I make for the first several years, but they don't care about that. They know these clients are going to be on the books for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. So they know they're going to make money over the long haul. And so part of the reason agents are able to make so much is there's all these companies out here, and they're all competing for the broker's business, because these companies don't actually have their own in-house sales force. They have independent contractors. And so if their compensation or their commission levels that they offer aren't competitive, I'm not going to place any business with them.
Hello, off schedule moment. Wanted to tell you about Southwestern Real Estate. They're 99% drama free, only 99, not 99.9. So it's a bit spicy, kind of like this episode. Anyway, they will learn you to kick ass at real estate. So make sure you guys click the link below, get in touch with them. Okay, back to work. Bye. That'll do for now. Like I said, make sure you click below to get some more information. And now back to the show. Now, that's brilliant. But on the side of fear, what were the people scared of in that scene? Because I'm on the side of excitement, but I understand and sympathize with the side of fear. And what do you think is the best case for that side of the room?
Well, the fear side is that thing's going to do what I'm doing. What do you need me for? That's one of the biggest fears that you see. I mean, you can see it in automated checkouts at McDonald's, where you come in and put in your order and you walk over and get your hamburger or whatever. You see it in so many different places where, call centers and back offices where technology can do that work, robo advising, robo everything. There's a fear that I'm going to lose my place in the world. And that's a function of, survival is all about, flexibility more than anything. So people that are inflexible and aren't willing to learn these new technologies and skills will ultimately be much in the way the horse was replaced by the tractor, right? At some point, you don't need more horses, you need more tractors, right? And so people have got to adapt. And I think you're going to have a huge part of society that won't be able to make that transition. And you're going to have to figure out, how do you take care of them? Because they're here, but if they can't learn, they don't have the ability to retrain or whatever, robots are going to become, a major part of our society. So all of these things create a lot of interesting moral implications for how we evolve and grow. And
that's that. I spoke with, I actually met, he was here in town and we had a cocktail dinner thing with him, Andrew Yang. He often, people know him for the $1,000 a month thing, but speaking with him for several hours and just hanging out. I was actually talking to, you probably know Eliav Cohen. He's actually working on AI here in Seattle near me. I'm in Portland. And so Eliav had him here in town, and I sat with Andrew, and that's exactly what he talked about. He was talking about how to, because that's his theory is that there's this inevitable. The AI wave is coming. It's already starting to show up in things like ChatGPT and all these other, I mean, you can name 10 of them, but that's his thing. It's like, how do we, there's people that are not going to survive the fallout of the wave. And so how do you protect these people? How do you give them something to do? Because that is what's going to happen, right? And that's an interesting question. I don't know the answers, but he was giving us a lot of that, and you're making me think of that conversation, because it was just like, this is very real. Like, I remember that night I was like, oh, this is not in 10 years. This is in 5 years. It's going to start happening,
but
very, very soon.
It is as exciting to me as the internet back in the early 90s, when you started to realize that we are literally moving into a totally new age of possibility for stuff. It's got that kind of exciting, I don't know, a possibility to it that's really cool. I mean, you see it in electronic vehicles and space programs and going to Mars and all that, but there's just a lot of really exciting things that I think we're going to get to see in the next couple of years.
It's going to be exciting. Now, do you think, this is a more theory question here, but because I'm nerding out about this, but I mean, the internet, the exponential growth of this whole thing, right? Because when you're talking about the agriculture to industrial to, the technology, and then the transformation age, I mean, do you think that we're going to go through like ages of civilization way faster because of this? Do you see that trend, or do you think we're just every civilization or every age felt like it was going too fast as well?
Yeah, I think in the middle of it, there's a thought experiment that someone from, I think is, what it was, 1843, if they were to be suddenly popped into today, they would die. I mean, because we do in a day right now what they did in a year back then in terms of stimulus data and productivity and things. And there's just no capacity to handle that. So the human isn't upgrading as fast as the technology. Yeah. So this is why the doomsday clock just went to 90 seconds away, right, from doomsday, because there's a lot of fear around the fact that, our hindbrain, our reptilian minds and stuff are not adapting and adopting to these changes as quickly. And as AI starts to take over, you start trying to figure out, I mean, I'll sometimes sit there and go, how did that just happen? Like I'm going, which program, was that Jasper, Quillbot, or ChatGPT that did that? Because I've got a couple different, things running that I'm using, and that starts to happen because they're knock-on effects to one thing changing something else. And so, it can be a little daunting in terms of keeping up with that. And the problem becomes the human just doesn't keep up fast enough. And then AI renders us to be the problem, which is you're back to Terminator.
Yeah. Or the Matrix.
Yeah. or I mean, a lot of guys say, look, so you give a supercomputer a task to make a paperclip. It's a supercomputer and it starts making paperclips, and that's all you tell it. So if you don't give it the right prompts, it eventually starts, figuring out, well, I could make more paperclips if I could control the NASA computers and control the other computers. And boy, if I had all the resources on the planet, I need, so again, a lot of these, they're simple thought experiments, but they do lead you to starting to think about, okay, you got to be careful what you're coding and prompting and,
the doom. There was a guy that I was listening to a podcast with Tom Segura. They had the guy from Google who was basically, his job was to see if the AI was sentient or not. And he was like, it's sentient. And he got fired.
I heard that.
So it's just like, you start hearing some of the stuff that he had to say, and you're like, what? Because I guess the program he was working on was saying that, hey, don't treat me like, because his job was like to mistreat it, quote unquote. This is a machine, so you don't really mistreat a machine, but he was like being, quote unquote, mean to it based on the language that he was giving it. Yeah. And at one point, the computer was like, hey, don't. I mean, I'll do it for you, but don't treat me like that. And he goes, wait a minute. Whoa.
Yeah. In humor context, those are kind of things that are difficult, but I don't believe it's just a matter of time before it'll figure that stuff out too.
Oh man, that's well, cool. This is fun. I'm glad we're having this is great conversation. Thank you for this. Now, for you, and I mean, I have a ton of more questions, but I know I want to make sure we're respectful to your time. Now, what for you? So we're looking at 2023. What's the next 5-10 years look like for you? Like, what's your North Star? Where, because 30 years ago it was finance, and then a little bit of mortgage lending. Which, I mean, it sounds like you navigated that '08 crisis decently. So
Well,
for you,
a lot of life jackets. Yeah.
yeah, no kidding. And I was gonna ask you about that too, and maybe we can get into that. But for you, when you look in the next 10 years and where you're at now, what you want to do, what's kind of your North Star?
Oh goodness. Finding simply joy and fulfillment in what I'm doing. It's like I have worked very hard, and that usually meant I was doing stuff that I was interested in, but maybe didn't like. So I like it when I feel like I'm cheating. Like every day I get up and whatever I like, I get to do that. So I think, I don't know what that means in terms of like a specific path. Traditionally I've always been around finance, technology, education, development, coaching. Those kind of things have always sort of been sort of in my DNA, right? And that was true back in the book business. I liked selling, but I also really loved coaching and teaching other kids how to sell. So there's certain functions, I guess, that you kind of come hardwired in. So I can't imagine they wouldn't be there, but I think my divining compass now is more towards, was today a good day? Did I live it like it was my last, to tie back into OG number 5, and would I have, would I go back and say, if that was the last one, would I call that a pretty good day? And so that it requires a little bit of discipline, and I have to be careful because I get, shiny objects always really get me excited. But I am trying to more and more just simply ask the question, did that bring me joy? Was that something I enjoyed doing? And if so, do a hell of a lot more of it. And if not, then don't, and trust that that's going to lead me to wherever I need to be in 5, 10. I have no desire to retire. I don't know what I'd retire from. Right. Retirement is a concept for people that, want to stop doing something. And my goal is to never want to retire, which means I've continued to find things that bring me joy. And why would I stop doing something that I find interesting, and so that's why when I get excited about AI, I'm like, this is exciting to me. I don't know why it's exciting, but there's something there. And if I stay with it and I learn about it and I play with it, eventually it might become a business. It might just become something that, we incorporate into classrooms for students. We're doing a class in 2 weeks on ethics and morals and how to use AI as a student, which is something we just started putting together just to have the conversation and say, don't be afraid to use it, but, also don't use it, in a way that's going to cut your own legs out from under you.
Yeah. And I feel like universities have a problem. We're not a problem, but a challenge to figure out the answer to that question. It's like, well, at what point do you say, hey, you can't use ChatGPT, and can you even tell? Like, or is it one of those things where you just like accept it and go, you know what, whatever, just get the just learn the lesson.
Yeah, it's gonna. I think again, everything is up for grabs. Our monetary system, our work, the way we work. Think about COVID did to working at home. I'm at home right now. I have a job at the University of North Carolina. I usually go in a couple of days a week now, but I don't go in 5 days anymore. And so a lot of these misconceptions or conceptions are being blown up. And so when you have work being challenged, and you have the monetary system itself being challenged, and you have healthcare being challenged, that's what makes this a really interesting kind of time to be alive, because it creates an opportunity for a lot of really interesting change in the next, 10, 20, 30, 100 years.
It's going to be wild. Oh my gosh. I'm so
excited. It's
going
to be fun.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to. I'm gonna nerd out I'll text you after this, just for the next every once in a while to go, did you see?
Yeah,
Gary V just released. Here's what Elon did with his Tesla. That's wild. One last question about business, and then we can go into some Southwestern stuff, if that's okay. You've sold 4 businesses. This is the first time I've launched something on my own under my LLC. So maybe I'm asking from a personal standpoint, but maybe other people listening can relate. How did you keep from getting attached to it? Because at some point it just feels like your baby. It's your idea. You're nurturing it. Just some water. Oh, tough wind. But selling it sounds like it's kind of like sending your kids off to college or something, or the first day of kindergarten. You're passing it on to other hands, how do you keep from attaching yourself to it, or how do you make it that transition smoother? Like, how do you trust that the person is going to take care of it? What was that like for you, and what have you learned about that experience of letting go of something you built from scratch?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's different for everybody, but for me, it was the point where another brighter future became a North Star. And at that point, I knew, okay, whether it's been, I think my first business started in 93, right after I left the book business, and we sold it in 99. So it was 6 years. So you could call it a 7-year itch. But right about that time, I just started, I'm not excited to come in every day and do this right now. And so when an opportunity to sell came along, it was like, ooh, if I sell, I'm going to get to learn something. And my question, if I'm ever in doubt about what to do, is where am I going to learn the most? And if learning the most is staying in the business that I'm in, I'll stay in that business. If it's, and it's that first going through an IPO, I learned a lot, and a lot of that has helped me, to this day, going through that whole process. And selling the business and realizing the cycle of starting and selling and going, oh, it's just a cycle. It's just like anything else, right? And you start another business, there's a cycle where that can be sold again. But the timing of it varies. And often for me, it's varied by there's just something else that's more exciting. Like I love what I'm doing right now at UNC, but there could come a day where suddenly there's just something that much more exciting out there that I find more fulfilling. And at that point, that's what I'd have to ask the question. Is it time to sell or move on or whatever that means? But if in doubt, I'll go with where am I going to learn the most? Because if you learn more, and and I'm in the big picture learning, you tend you have more opportunities in the future. You're expanding the possibility, not shutting it down. And sometimes it's financial, but sometimes it's just I'm going to learn a lot more here, regardless of whether you make more money or not.
Now that's interesting, because in Southwestern, at least when we were being taught, and like this all this stuff that they taught, it was your 5-year goal plan, and they made you like think super long term. So it sounds like you're still implementing that, but the goals, instead of you saying, hey, in 5 years, I'm going to commit to, being in this business. Who knows? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. So in order to still stay focused on a goal, but not attached to something that maybe isn't bringing you life, is to make the goal to be doing things that bring you life. It sounds like that's kind of the mentality.
Yeah. So think of it, in terms of a compass, that like I did a lot of that kind of big picture, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year kind of planning and stuff. And then I worked very hard to live into that. But then you get to a point, in life or career, wherever you're like, okay, if I set a new goal and I'm trying to live into that, I've created, a boundary on what's possible. And so at some point I'm going to go, all right, I'm going to go on a walkabout, kind of an intentional leaning forward and saying yes to whatever's being presented, and just trust that whatever got me here is going to take me to my next bigger, better, interesting, future. And the having a goal will limit me in some way. The having a big idea of what I want to do in 5 years from here becomes limiting, because I'm generating it based on what I know. And I'm wondering, if I don't generate things based on what I know, then what's possible? Because if it's what's possible and I'm generating it, it's some iteration, some variation of what I've already done. And so I think starting out for young people, I'm very, if you want to have a goal and a specific objective, it just provides them a framework to get traction and engage. But then at some point, you also have to say to yourself, all right, if I'm going to continue simulation after simulation of the same thing, like for me, being at UNC is sort of a quantum leap from where I was, because I'd been various forms of finance and mortgage and banking, and my technology company was financial software and technology. So I'm still iterating right within the same thing. How do I get out of that? I had to take a year off and just sit around and do nothing for a year, and trust that at some point something would come up. And one of my friends from college called me up and said, hey, I heard UNC is trying to do this, and they got this money from one of the founders of BlackRock, and blah, blah, blah. And it had BlackRock, it had technology, it had startup, it had all the things that I was looking for. but I had to intentionally sit for a year before that appeared. If I'd acted and done anything on my own volitionally, I would have done some other iteration of what I'd already done. Right. So sometimes you almost have to stop what you're doing to create a pause for something new to emerge, whether it takes a month or year or whatever. And this is now that's sort of how I'm just kind of approaching things a little differently. Just, trying something new.
That's super awesome. I way more relate to that. Like that I feel very understood.
Good.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I know I am. I wanted to give a quick shout out to the people that make this show possible, the people that bring this show to you. These are people who all sold books, and we're here to give a quick shout out to them in the spotlight about their company and what they're up to. So if you're interested, or if after listening to this, you're kind of wanting to know a little bit more, feel free to click on the links below to connect with these people. These are from an excerpt I have with them from a podcast that I do on the side. It's called Executive Exercises, where we take all our sponsors and they come into a think tank and share some awesome ideas about how to grow their business specifically on different topics. Go check that out. But I pulled some of the comments that they had explaining what they do and who they're looking for on their companies. And so if that sounds like you, like I said, click below. Hope you enjoy. On a note from I'm trying to think, like if I was looking into this, and for people who are listening who might be like, hey, this actually, I want to learn more about this. What's the barrier to entry? Like maybe I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, that sounds cool, but I don't know shit about insurance. Like why would I want to go talk to people?
Yeah, the barriers to entry, I think, are really pretty low. Everybody would probably have a different opinion, but in terms to just be able to get out the door and go sell, you've got to get a license. I have my life and health license because you needed the health license at Family Heritage, or if you want to sell Medicare products or certain types of health products, you have to have the health side. But what it takes to get either one or both of those licenses is roughly the same. You take a study course. You may need to study for 15 hours. You may need to study as many as 30 hours. But like with Cardinal, we've got a pretty cool course. From studying to getting your license can be as quick as like 7 to 10 days if you really 15 to 20 if you're moving at a medium pace. And beyond that, if it takes you longer than that, you're just not really all that motivated to start because it's not a difficult process.
Yo, let's get off schedule one last time. Go watch a movie, or maybe you should figure out how to work at EnLight.Energy. Alex Black is crushing it down there, and a former DSM, Julio Hernandez, are both running this company. And man, they are cranking 10 people on their team and growing. It's enough that Alex only has to sell like one thing every other week and make over 6 figures. So if you want to learn more about that and maybe help change the planet, click on the link below. That'll do for now. Like I said, make sure you click below to get some more information. And now back to the show. Well, because like in Southwestern, and this we just talked about this too with some of our sponsors. We have a separate podcast, EnLight, Executive Exercises, as we call it. And so we have our sponsors come in. It's like a think tank on a specific topic, and we were talking about goals. And one of the things that people were saying, I love when people say, the SMART goals, and I think that's a good idea, measurable and realistic and all that stuff. And that's great for the people that really motivates them. But to me, it never got me going. So to me, what was exciting is feeling connected, feeling like I had good opportunity to connect people, networking, feeling balanced. And so I started making those my goals, and the stress in my life and the ability to be productive completely changed, even though those aren't tangible and or measurable, or by standards of metrics. You can't really, how do you like gauge how networked I am, but I felt that way. And I keep feeling that way the more I do the show. And it's been a life-giving thing for me, this podcast. And so when you say that, it makes me feel like, oh man, I'm doing okay. So thank you for that. That's really validating.
No, man, it is a completely, there are some kids I sit down with, I was like, this kid needs a plan. But there are other kids I'm like, dude, you do not need a plan. You are so locked in. I mean, you kind of know what you want. Just follow that. Like your operating system is those things that you were talking about that you can, they're palpable to you, right? I mean, when you're in that zone, and when you're not, just like that's your business plan. Stay with it, keep doing it, and it'll lead you where you need to go. And you'll develop the skills you need to learn as you walk that path. I think it was the old Joseph Campbell. It's like, if you find yourself on a path, it's someone else's, right? Because they made it. So the path's made by walking. And, you got to walk your own path to know. I mean, no one can tell you if you're happy or not, right? So, what is your ultimate litmus test? And all people they'll say, have enough money, I'll be happy, or if I have enough time, I'll be happy, or whatever. And if you're fortunate enough to have enough time or enough money and go, oh shit, that's not it, that's catching the tiger by the tail, then you're forced, this is what the transformation economy I think will be all about, is you're forced to then rethink what is really important to me. And gosh, if I'm already happy, but it's doing this, then isn't this just what I should be doing right now? Why go do all these other, other things to try to create a proxy?
That's brilliant. And that's a great way to operate. I mean, for people that it works that way, because some people are like, I need, 30 demos a day or whatever, and they need that. And that's great. Yeah. More power to them.
And some days I need that. Some days I have to get up and just say, okay, I got a list. I got 12 things I need to bang out, and you bang out those 12 things. I mean, you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. It's just, I can't walk in every day and look at a list of 12 things that, drive me crazy.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. Yeah, I understand. Totally get it. Wow. That was great. Thank you so much for that. So wonderful. Okay, let's move into some Southwestern stuff, because of course this is the alumni podcast, Ponytails podcast. So what I'd like to do now is let's go back to 1985, maybe fall of 84, right? And where is Todd? What part of Chapel Hill is Todd sitting at when someone comes up to him and goes, "Hey, what are you doing next summer?"
I can tell you the exact moment. I was sitting on a couch at the fraternity house, and a guy that was a senior, Tom Truitt. If you've never interviewed Tom Truitt, you should get him on your show. He's in Nashville. He was a Sigma Nu, and he had just sold books, and he had gotten a job with Procter and Gamble. And at that particular time in 85, they were like IBM and P&G were the two biggies, and no one was getting jobs. And Tom had gotten this job with his expense account. I mean, I just remember, I was like, how the hell did you get that job? He's like, I got to tell you, it was because I sold books. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I sold books and I made a bunch of money, but I learned to sell. And, I had like multiple McNeil Labs. Well, it was just all these companies wanted to hire him. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to be the guy over here crying with the bong right now. I want to be, I want to be Tom. Right. And so he was graduating, and I said, how do I learn more? And he said, he gave me the name of a couple other guys in the fraternity that were thinking about selling, that had sold once before. And I started talking to them. So I kind of leaned into it a little bit because I wanted to know how he did what he did. That was fascinating to me at that time in my life.
And then you went to the informational session, or you talked to whoever, and then you heard
Craig
about the program.
Sutter, man. Yeah, they said,
"Come there it is."
Yeah, Big Craig was sitting there, with his leg cocked back in his chair and his, pen, and he started, and started talking to me. And I mean, literally, I was like, okay, cool. Sign me up. I'm in. And then I sent the, letter of credit home to my parents, and they were like, what the hell are you doing? We sent you to college, and now you're going to go become a door-to-door salesman. And so, they were my first big obstacle there.
Now, I want to ask this because sometimes this is a different answer. Now, when you first talked to Tom, he's, you're seeing the opportunity, you're seeing the end results, you're seeing doors opening because of the experience, resume building, all that stuff. Was there anything else that really attracted you besides that more maybe deeper when you talked to Craig? Like, for example, for me, if they started out with going to New York, I've always wanted to go to New York and making money and all that stuff, and all that sounded great. That's what got me to the info. But after I got done hearing about it, to me, it was that challenge. I was like, as an immigrant, I've had to deal with my parents' choices to do hard things so we can get here. But this is the first time I get to choose for me to do something hard. And that was like my why. Did you have something similar, or was it still just the resume builder?
Well, I mean, I was a simple creature. I wanted to make money. I was a first generation kid. My mom and dad didn't go to college. I was the first ever in our whole familiar generational background to ever go to college. And so they couldn't help me. They couldn't help me in terms of understanding what college could be like. But, my dad was an electrician for Duke Power. So, not having a college degree, he would always impress upon me that, he was limited in what he could do with a high school degree. Right. And limited meaning I can only make so much money. And when I sat down with Craig, he's like, look, you can make as much money as you want, as you work as hard as you want, work hard, study hard, be teachable, and you'll make a lot of money. I'm like, I can do that. So it was pretty, he said, you can make $5,000 this summer. And I had been a tennis pro for like the last several summers at our club growing up, and they paid me $6-7 an hour. I'm like, I did the math. I'm like, there's no way I can make that kind of money. So it was pretty simple. I was a simple creature. I just wanted to go.
It made sense.
Grind and make money. Yep.
So when you get out there, where did you go to sell?
Paris, Texas. Paris, Texas.
Texas. Oh my, they have one.
Paris,
Texas. Texas has one, and I heard they have the audacity to also have an Eiffel Tower in the middle of that town. Is that correct?
Well, and they have the record for the largest tornado and the longest. It was the widest tornado in recorded history, and it stayed on the ground for the longest. And there was 3+ miles. There was just one neighborhood. It was 3 miles long, and it was about 20 streets wide. And it was the path of the tornado. And so it was like famous for this tornado and the factories there. But it was a mill town, lower income kind of a place. And
that's some good territory. That's some good territory.
Yeah,
no big. What did you? I always like to explain. I always like to ask, first store, or it doesn't have to be exact, but what do you remember of like the first, right? Your first store, first customer. Do you remember any of those things? The first time you talked to a human, the first time somebody bought, you're like, it works, or something like that.
Oh, good Lord. I blocked most all that out.
I would too, honestly. Your brain's just trying to go, don't go there.
Don't go there. No, I mean, I can remember this little diner that we were at, and I remember the woman, and she was a single divorced mom, and she had 3 dachshunds and a above ground pool in the back of her little tiny brick ranch. And I was there with a couple of people that I met in sales school. And, we had a good first summer. We worked our asses off, and it was hot as hell, and the mosquitoes were horrible, and it rained. It seemed like every day for 3 hours, just enough to keep the humidity at 400%. And, but I hated it. I mean, I don't think I've ever hated anything as much as I hated selling books. To this day.
You said, let's go back for 6 more.
No, I was never going back again. There's no way in hell I was going back, man. I made like $700-800 my first summer. I was like, that's good. I'd already done the budget to get me through my 4 summers, and there's no way in hell I was going back. And then I wrecked my car like 3 weeks before sales school, and it was going to cost like $3,800 to fix it because it was my fault. And I had the collision on that car. I didn't have the other stuff. And so I was like, damn it, I'm going to have to go sell books. And
then back you went.
And I went back again, and then ended up in Independence, Missouri. And then I got addicted to making a good living and having fun during the school year, traveling and, living kind of large. I was like, dang it, my lifestyle sort of got upgraded in a way that, my parents weren't going to send me 10-15 grand a year to have in college. So I kind of, again, I was a simple creature at the time. I just wanted to make money and have fun.
So did you, oh man, that's so funny. So was it the Sizzler trip that got, the lifestyle that got you in the lifestyle, or like, was there what the mentorship? I mean, you talked about that where the college kids now appreciate mentorship. What kept you around the most besides the money?
Well, Craig was he drove me crazy, but he was such a good teacher. He really was, and he really did care. And I always learned stuff when I was with him. As much as I tried not to, he would somehow, he'd tell a story, or he'd send me something or whatever, and I'd be like, dang, that's pretty interesting. The books I read, that he sent me were like, my friends weren't reading those books. And so I would say I kind of came for the money and probably stayed for the mentorship and the camaraderie. It was an entirely different ecosystem of friends that I had that were not at my college, that were all over the country, that I still keep up with today. And that's pretty cool.
It still is, right? I mean, that's kind of the nature of this podcast, where there's something about, heck, I met you an hour and a half ago, right? And now I'm looking at it going, dang, this is pretty wild. This is pretty cool. Wow. Amazing. And you got about 8 minutes left, right? Before you got to hop off?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to do a quick rapid fire questions to get to, and then we'll do a quick ponytail and get out of here. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Cool. So rapid fire questions. And we don't have to go into too much detail of these, but what was your favorite turf of all the 7 summers that you sold? Favorite like territory?
I would say Wisconsin, Appleton, Wisconsin. Kind of a college town. It was cooler in the summers. Enjoyed Appleton.
Love it. A lot of people say Wisconsin. Favorite HQ?
Oh gosh, it was probably strangely my second summer. Both my roommates left. They were padding all their stuff, and I had to fire them and send them home. But it was in a pool house in Texarkana, Arkansas. The guy had said, "You can stay here, but you got to clean up my pool house." And we cleaned it all out. And it was just like every night coming back from work, and we were living on cots in a pool house, but it was this doctor's house out in the country, and he had this nice pool. And just being able to, come in after a hard day, jump in the pool, chill out. It was a nice HQ.
In Arkansas.
And strangely, when they all left, I was like, I had it all to myself, and having a whole quarters to myself ended up being a pretty cool thing.
Wonderful. And then the last one, favorite breakfast spot?
Oh my gosh, we went to so many. We always found diners. I really enjoyed the diners because you found people that were always there, and you got to know them over the summer. And so, it was always kind of fun, finding an old diner.
My second summer, I was with my brother and best friend, and we got the waiter to do execs with us at the end of the summer. It's pretty special. So those are the rapid fire questions. All right. So we'll close it up with the last few minutes. Do you normally ask for the ponytails? If people don't know, if this is your first episode, it's typically our guests' favorite memory, story, or anything significant that they remember. Maybe it could have been a specific customer or a day or anything like that. But it's up to our guests to decide what they want to share at this point. I'll leave it up to you, Todd, if you want to tell us anything that rings a bell or any closing thoughts on Southwestern, anything like that. This is your ponytails.
Wow. Oh God, over 7 summers. Man, so many things. When I thought about, I don't know why I just thought of this when we were talking about that second summer in Independence, Missouri, but the house that we stayed in, I don't know what it was about me and my roommates, but same thing. By the third week, they'd both quit and gone home. So I was staying in this house with this family in Independence, Missouri. I was by myself. Raymond was the guy that lived there. He worked at GM. He worked the night shift. So he would get in from work about 5:36 every morning, 6:30, about the time I was waking up. They had no showers in the house. So I was living in the basement, and there was a bathtub there, and there's a bathtub upstairs. And sometimes the bathtub downstairs didn't work. But I mean, taking a cold bath as opposed to a cold shower was just absolutely brutal in the morning. But I remember sitting in this tub, and I would put the cold water in there because I was trying to do my part. And Raymond, these were simple, he's a night shift worker at GM, factory worker. He's got a big family. His wife didn't work. So to supplement their food budget, they raised rabbits, and they had literally like 10 pens of rabbits right behind the house. And so Raymond's sort of thing was when he came home from the factory at GM, every night, the first thing he did is he went out to the hutch. He reached in there. He would grab a rabbit. He had a hammer, thwack, and then I hear a, like that. And he would, then I hear a boop when he threw it in the basket. And so I would sit there every morning in this tub, with cold water in the basement of this house in Missouri. And the first thing I would hear, invariably the timing was perfect, was him coming, getting his rabbits and doing his daily ritual, because everything they fixed, it was rabbit stew, it was rabbit, and that was like their meat. And I don't know why that story popped up, but it was that kind of crazy stuff that happened again and again and again on the book field. And it's priceless. It's disturbing. It's all the kind of things that you would expect from 7 years of rummaging around out there on the book field. But that one just came to mind. I could probably give you 50 more, but that's
Do you ever look at rabbits the same? Like when you see a rabbit, you're like,
I cannot.
Do you get goosebumps? You get cold goosebumps?
My daughter wanted a rabbit one time. I'm like, no, we cannot have a rabbit. I mean, it's and they had 5 cats that stayed in the basement, and I was allergic to cats, but I couldn't do anything about it. And they like to sleep on me at night. So I had night terrors because I would wake up in the middle of the night and there'd be 3 cats on my chest. And he was like, I'd wake up because of the breathing. I could have trouble breathing, not from just the allergies, but the fact that there were 3 cats on my chest sitting there, just enjoying the ride. And I'd have to scare them off. And it's like these things are kind of absolutely, but today, again, I get up every day and I say, I'm not selling books today. And that makes everything else easier.
It's perspective, right? It's all about perspective.
Yeah.
Oh man, Todd, thank you so much. That was wonderful. We'll wrap this one up here, guys. Thank you so much for listening in. If you guys have questions for Todd, you can go find him on his LinkedIn, and the link of which will be in the description notes below. If you're watching it on YouTube, it's down in the description of the video. Thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure you guys sign up for Bizzler. We'll see you guys on the next one. I'm Andres Gamboa. Goodbye.